In 2016, Sonic Mania was announced and that it would be developed by Christian Whitehead and Simon Tonley, the duo behind the mobile ports of Sonic 1 and 2, which were considered to be the definitive versions of those games for many reasons, as they were rebuilt from the ground up on what was known as the Retro Engine. In short, it's Sonic 1 and 2, but better. Only thing is, they're trapped on your smartphones alongside actual mobile games, almost all of which have a completely different structure to games found anywhere else. Enter SEGA Forever. SEGA Forever was a sub-brand of Sega created to handle the mobile ports of classic Sega games on iOS and Android. Most of these would be emulated Mega Drive Genesis ROMs with big borders on the sides of the screen with save state slots and touch controls. All of these games would have golden outlines and a Sega logo on their app icons, and the most important part is that they had to make one big change. The mobile game market wasn't what it used to be, and almost nobody paid for apps anymore. A price tag usually draws people away. Most games these days are filled to the brim with ads and microtransactions, so what happened next was clearly a no-brainer. Let's take classic games from the 90s, make them free, and fill them with ads. And this wasn't just the emulated ROMs, this also extended to remasters of Sega games already on mobile platforms, which includes Crazy Taxi and the classic Sonic games, so I think you can already see where I'm going with this. In 2016, I noticed the updates at the time, and I was horrified at the idea of these ports getting the freeware treatment. Ads? In my classic Sonic game? How dare they? Christian Whitehead had stated on Twitter the choice had nothing to do with him or Stealth, as they were working on Sonic Mania and would have nothing to do with the mobile ports going forward. But you could pay for no ads for like $1, $1.50, depending on your region, but if you already bought the game previously, you could select restore your purchase and the game should play as normal, except it didn't work at first. The game should recognize your previous purchase until they updated it and then it worked, and if that's not a sign for things to come, I don't know what is. When you start up the game, you're required to input your age like in Sonic Dash. Information sent back to Sega, and if you were playing it for free and had no internet connection, you'd get a blank screen with an error message saying you need to connect to the internet to continue. Now, aside from me as a teen playing these games on my phone on public transport because I couldn't use internet, why would a game from the 90s require an internet connection? Well, two reasons: data collection and to load ads. And they were everywhere. They appear when you choose the save select. There's an ad when you unpause the game. No kidding, when you pause and unpause, it plays an ad and there's a 3, 2, 1 before the game resumes. There's an ad when you restart the level. There's an ad when you finish a level. There's an ad when you leave and return to the app. There's an ad when you get a game over. There's an ad when you try to slice your sandwich. There's an ad when you try to piss. There's an ad when you try to time travel in Sonic CD. Oh wait, no there isn't, sorry. I was just expecting it to. For a couple years I tried not updating because I didn't want to. I'm sure you've noticed I can be quite the stubborn bitch. I had wanted to keep the versions without the golden outline as I liked those icons better. Of course, I accidentally updated Sonic 1, and Sonic CD would eventually no longer work on the current iOS, meaning an update was required to use it. So I did, and it wiped all my saves. Thanks. As for Sonic 1, I kept note of the differences between it and the unupdated Sonic 2, and sure enough, there was a difference. I couldn't access debug mode. Selecting no save game and pressing each letter of the Sega logo, and no ring sound. While in Sonic 2, unupdated, it still did so. That was a little disappointing, as my preferred way to play Sonic 1 is with Elemental Shields, Tails, and the 7 Chaos Emeralds enabled, but thankfully they did fix this in an update, and both Sonic 1 and 2 allowed you to continue using the debug menu level select. Eventually, as your phone's operating system continues to get updates, soon enough so do the apps on it, and one day, Sonic 2 would no longer work and I had to update it too. So all my classic Sonic games had the golden outline. Updates would continue to roll out over the years, each as notes saying bug fixes and refinements, or even trying to be creative by saying, "We've been busy jumping around and squashing bugs and eating chili dogs," or Eggman's plan to fill the game with bugs has failed and they've all been safely removed. And we even have a larger resolution for larger phones. I mean, quite frankly, these ports were praised for having widescreen, but honestly it depends on the device you have. My iPhone 6 had it at 16:9, but my much older 3GS and iPad had it close to the classic square screen, with my current iPhone XR being pretty wide, which does alter the boss arenas. At some point, I think in 2021, out of the blue, they changed the icons back from the SEGA Forever style with a solid light blue background for Sonic 1 and a solid yellow background for Sonic 2. Huh, that's a bit random, but okay. Meanwhile, Sonic CD to this day still uses the exact same SEGA Forever icon. Way to be consistent, SEGA Forever. Heck, it's just got another update while I was writing this, still the same icon. It's actually kinda crazy, years after the PC and console version of the same Sonic CD remaster stopped getting updates, the mobile version continues to get them alongside Sonic 1 and 2. We got the super widescreen, and the intro movie was moved to its own menu option, though for a brief moment it seemed to have been removed from the beginning of a save game, only to be added back later. And even the UI has been altered to be wider, maybe a little too wide. Like, please tell me it's not just me, but the characters selection for Sonic and Tails feels off when they're way off to the left there, but for the most part it fits in well, remembering this was designed for earlier iPhones. Now, of course, SEGA Forever continue to update Sonic 1 and CD for refinements and bug fixes, but as that happens, more bugs and glitches that weren't previously present keep appearing. Background and foreground objects now have pop-in. At some point, changing the opacity of the controls started doing this. Ow, my ears. With the extra widescreen, Sonic and Tails can't run off screen, though the notch on iPhones may hide that. And one that annoys me the most is that the button that toggles debug mode where you fly around placing objects triggers the pause screen, meaning the game pauses every time you switch back and forth. Meaning, if you play the free version, that's another ad every time you try to switch. Now at some point, I don't seem to recall when, SEGA Forever did something really weird. They updated Sonic 4 Episode 2 to be free. Huh? Yeah, Sonic 4 Episode 2 has the golden SEGA Forever icon and was given the free with ads treatment. Sonic 4 Episode 2. Not even Episode 1, just Episode 2. Sonic 4 isn't even a classic SEGA game, why is it under SEGA Forever's control? From what I can tell, they haven't made any changes at all since updating. The aspect ratio is still the same, with black borders on each side of the screen. Your saves stay intact and you can still play Episode Medal if you have both games. Now, as you'd expect, I didn't want to update in case something bad would happen, and sure enough, for compatibility reasons, I had no choice, and what happened? It did not allow me to restore my purchase. I bought this game back in 2016, and my Apple ID still has proof of purchase, but sure enough, it doesn't think I paid for it, and I refuse to buy it again when I've already paid for it. A couple times I've been able to cheese it by spamming the buttons and tricked it into starting without the ads, but I wouldn't be surprised if they've since patched that out. I went to contact SEGA Forever's customer support, and no surprise, they weren't very helpful. With long back and forths via email with me describing my issue, showing the proof of purchase, and them asking me if I've tried every basic thing like reinstalling the app, re-logging in, and me reporting back saying I've tried everything with lots of time gaps between replies, ending with them providing me with a download code for me to claim at the App Store, which you'd think would solve all my problems, but nope. By the time I've typed it all into the App Store, I get an error message saying the code is expired and I can't resume the email chain because their helpline have ended my help ticket. So I just gave up in frustration, not to think about it until the next time I felt compelled to play Sonic 4 Episode 2, which was roughly about a year later, where I attempted again to ask for their help, and I wish I was exaggerating, but the second time went literally the exact same as the first, ending with me getting a redeem code that claimed to be expired. And at this point, I can't be bothered putting more effort into removing ads on Sonic freaking 4 Episode 2, a game that shouldn't be like this to begin with. And you may be commenting down there saying, well, go play it on Steam, and I already have both Sonic 4 episodes on Steam, and the reason I play them at all is to keep myself occupied when I'm far from home. This is why I prefer playing them on my phone. And for Sonic 4 Episode 1, the mobile version is actually better than the PC and console version with better visuals and improved physics. Oh wait a minute, no, they actually removed it from the App Store. Well, I'd be more mad if this stayed the case, but at some point they seem to have brought it back. I really don't understand what's going on with all this stuff. Which is reflective in my phone's game screen, with all the apps having their own icons, with Sonic CD and Sonic 4 sticking out like a sore thumb. Now, before I continue, in my Sonic Origins video, a lot of you, and I do mean a lot of you, kept asking how I have Sonic 3 on my phone, and of course, this is Sonic 3 Air, a fan port of Sonic 3. There's a version running off a web browser which can be used to play it on iOS, you just need to save it to your home screen and add the ROM file taken from the Steam version of Sonic 3. Except, Sega removed Sonic 3 and Knuckles from Steam when Origins came out. Back to my phone screen, you may have noticed even newer icons of Sonic 1 and 2, which are from much more recent updates. Okay. Sonic 2's icon is basically the same, but with West Side Island in the background. And Sonic 1's is completely different, with Sonic sitting behind the game's logo with a light blue background. Meanwhile, the Android version of the game has a dark blue background with a yellow circle behind Sonic. And did they actually fix any bugs in this update? Doesn't look like it. These games have been the SEGA Forever versions longer than they weren't at this point, and they still haven't fixed the pausing debug mode glitch, but nothing comes close to the biggest change they made in this new update. If you're playing the free version, you start off with just one life, and if you get a game over, instead of the usual game over screen, a box pops up and asks if you would like to watch an ad to continue. And you know what? It's the free version. Many mobile games, even Sonic Dash, let you cheat death by watching an ad. So normally I'd let this slide. But I have the paid no ads version of the game. So imagine how I feel when I start playing, die 3 times, and it asks me if I would like to watch an ad? What?! That's just messed up. I know Sega don't feel lives are necessary in gaming anymore, leading to them removing them in Colors Ultimate and Origins, but using that as an excuse to put ads in here is disgusting! I already don't think ads should be in a classic Sonic game, something that was a full-price console game in the 90s. The gameplay has set my brain to want to be moving and reacting quickly at all times, and it feels really annoying just to stop and wait with no control over and over again. Crazier is the sheer amount of comments on my last video revealing how many of you play with ads and have no problem with it. How do you live this way? What's your secret? But I can excuse that for the free version of the game that lets you play for free in exchange for ads. But if you paid for no ads, why is it here? And as I tested it, I also found it was inconsistent. Most times trying to trigger a game over would result in a play an ad screen, but other times it would just play the regular game over sequence instead. And if you remember my Retro Engine Secrets video, I broke down all the options in the debug menu. Well, if you were to enable S1 spikes, normally it would restore the properties from the first game, where if you landed on spikes once and then fell on them a second time, you would die. Something that does not happen in later titles. But on mobile, enabling this option does nothing. It no longer serves a purpose.
It still works perfectly fine in Origins.
The worst part of this is that it was probably done by accident. How do you accidentally make a function not work and not notice? Doesn't matter. But all things considered, I don't think anyone cared for S1 spikes to begin with, but what if it happened to another option? Emerald count, disable spin dash, S3 items and insta-shield, and what if it happened to Proto Palace in Sonic 2? Origins already took Proto Palace away, so mobile is all I have left. You're not taking it away from me, okay? Now, as hated as this recent update is, a couple weeks later there was another patch and suddenly, no more would you like to play an ad. Thank God for that! But S1 Spikes still doesn't work, and who knows what's next to not work properly and never get addressed.
But despite the poor treatment of the classic Sonic games, SEGA Forever ain't that bad. On their Twitter, they always highlight anniversaries of legacy Sega things, as well as pulling concept art and beta footage from the archives, so that's pretty cool.